No.
We're going to start this panel with booze. There we go. I would say never make friends with alkali because he will destroy your liver, but Jesus, will he destroy your liver the right way? I'd love to wear this throughout the entire panel, but you will not be able to understand me through all of it, so I have to take off the face. I can fucking unplug it. There we go. All right. This is professionalism, kids. This is breaking the hell out of the fourth wall right now. There we go. Okay. Am I behind schedule, or is it not quite? Okay, good. Got a little time to recombobulate myself, pull out my notes, make sure they're still there. Welcome, enter, come in. I should let you know, by the way, that I tend to run things, I do have an outline, but I tend to run things kind of loosely, trying to follow along with what you all want and or need to hear. So if you have any questions, if I'm going too fast, if you can think of a topic that I have not covered and you don't think I'm already going in that direction, feel free to put a hand up at any time. I would love to hear from folks to make sure that you get the most out of this as we possibly can. First, I have to find my notes, or I'm just going to go in circles for an hour, and you'll hate me, and you'll get nothing out of this, and you'll have wasted your time. So.
But it'll be fun to watch, right?
Possibly. If I can't find my outline, no, I'm not going to update the app. Piss off right now. Thank you. Okay. Which one did they? Oh, so this was branding and banking, I think, first part?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I also should note that this is part one of a 3-part panel. I used to try and do all this shit in 1 hour, but turning your art into a business, if you've tried it at this point, you've probably figured out it takes a lot. So, this is part one, which is branding and banking, and then what do they actually title the other two? Something else and something else, and then eventually Patreon, because that's where you all want to end up anyway, isn't it? Really? If Sked will actually load. Okay, well the hotel's Wi-Fi it hates us all. There we go. Okay, so yeah, so this is branding and banking loosely. Website and social management is happening at 7 p.m. And then Sunday, I'll be doing Patreon and mailing lists. So you don't need to show up for all 3 of them, but you should. This will be, by the time we get to the third panel, this will be down to about here, if there's anything left in it at all. So what time is it right now? Perfect, right at 5:30. So, thank you all for showing up. My name is Matthew Ebel. Are any of you familiar with me or what I do? Yeah, you, thanks. Yeah. So I am a musician. I am also a voice actor. I am, as of late, also a DJ as well. I have been a performing artist if you ask my mom, since I popped out. But I've been a performing artist professionally since 1999. Yes, I'm an old fucker. And I have been doing it full-time since 2007. So to say that I have been a starving artist is an understatement, but I have actually been making my living via my art, not with a day job, since 2007. My day job basically is auditioning for audiobook scripts and stuff like that. Like that's what basically the day jobbiest part of my day job. But I effectively work in my underwear in a home office, and isn't that really the goal that we're all shooting for here? So, let me actually start with just a quick poll of what flavors of art we're dealing with here. How many of you are here because you would like to turn a drawing art? How many of you are drawers? Okay, kind of figured that, like drawing illustration. Musicians? Always, of course. Yeah. But I'm specifically asking, like, what do you want to turn into a legitimate business? Like, what do you actually, whether part-time or hopefully full-time, what do you actually want to do? Authors. Okay, 1, that's good. Fursuit makers? Yeah.
I know.
Okay, so then those of you who haven't raised your hand yet, what am I missing? How about you?
So, belly dance.
Belly dance. Okay, the performing artist, effectively. I should have put that under. In the future, I will put that under, instead of saying just musician, because that's like your world is going to be a lot of the same world mine is. You know, you and I are both the product. We're legitimate whores, really. We want people to pay us for our body, you know. Who else like didn't raise their hand in one of the other things? How about you?
Not really art related, more like a non-profit, but I feel like a lot of these things will be applicable.
Oh yeah. It's kind of the basics of just like starting any fucking business, but like there's a lot of it geared towards artists because that's my experience. You know, anybody that I missed? Have I missed anything? Like what other art businesses are we looking at here, or some of you just sort of like I'm not sure. All right, so I guess that's the gamut so far. So, the first and probably the most difficult thing to figure out is, are you ready to turn it into a business? Like, are you ready to make that jump from it's a hobby to this is a part of my life that I take seriously and will work toward? Because, you know, I mean, I sat there banging out MIDI tracks and stuff like that in junior high when I was first dabbling with this stuff. It didn't become a serious career choice until I was, you know, later on in high school and actually looking like, shit, I need to go to a college and I need to figure out what I'm going to do at that college, you know. So you have to figure out like at what point you want to take it seriously enough to actually treat it like work, to treat it like a job. Which is a very difficult thing it was a very difficult thing for me as an artist to look at my product as a product and not just this thing came to my mind and I want to poop it out onto a sheet of paper or onto an audio tape. That's how old I am. So you have to ask yourselves the question like, am I ready for this? And you can judge that by some easily quantifiable things like would others pay money for what I'm making? Kind of an important question if you want to make it a business. You know, is anybody going to open their wallets for what I'm doing? And an even better thing to ask for that is, have people paid money for what I'm doing already? Have family members hired you to make art, to belly dance? If your family members are paying you to belly dance, that's weird. But you know.
Kentucky.
Okay, that works. Hey, I am all for Kentucky.
I'm so sorry.
Anyway, I don't know. Kentucky makes some good things. Anyway, sorry. But I mean, like, have other people either already paid you for a commission, for a story, for a song, for a performance, for whatever? Have they offered you to? You say, oh, no, I don't do it as a business, but you're here, so you're thinking of doing it as a business. Like, would you look at what it is that you're producing right now and say, I would buy this at a con. I would pay money for this on Beatport or on iTunes, you know, Apple Music or whatever. Another question to ask yourself, do you actively collaborate with other professionals in your art? And I don't just mean like making a product together, you know, like especially in the electronic music world, I get asked like, hey, we should collab sometime. A lot, and it goes nowhere. I mean, more than just like trying to work on a finished piece together. Or do you go to forums? Do you go to conventions for the art that you're looking to make into a business? Like for me, it would be NAMM or the CD Baby DIY conference or the New Music Expo or something like that. Do you do any kind of editing or feedback of other people's work, and they in turn do feedback for you? Are you collaborating with other professionals that do what you do? Because that's going to be important no matter what, and that's going to give you honest feedback. I say professionals because, you know, I draw, this person draws, and we tell each other what we think of our drawings is healthy, but I draw, this person makes their living drawing, and if they're willing to do some kind of an editorial exchange or shoot the shit or just a frequent exchange of ideas, that carries a lot more water because that person is actually applying their talents as a business. Are you doing that? Are you putting forth the time and effort to socialize? I know we're furries, it's fucking hard. But, like, are you putting forth the time and effort to socialize and interact and collaborate on any level with the people who are already doing this as a business? Here's a part where this applies particularly to artists, by the way. Do you listen to and do you heed constructive criticism? Because this sucks. If you tell me anything that I don't like about my music, I assume you're an asshole who's out to kill me. Do you know the difference between your ego and actual artistic vision? Like, can you divorce yourself from the product you are creating? Once you're done with that product, or at many stages of creating that product, are you able to step back and look at it like somebody who hasn't poured their blood, sweat, and tears into it and make an honest assessment? If somebody tells you something about that piece that you've been working on, can you, do you have the self-esteem and the psychology to dispassionately look at that product and assess what they told you about it and either decide, no, I like it the way it is because X, Y, and Z, or, let me try that. Let me tweak that. Let me experiment with that. Can you actually divorce yourself from your product enough to look at it like it's a batch of cookies you made because you run a bakery, Very importantly, another question, this is still all just are you even ready to attempt this line here? Can you produce on a regular schedule? Okay? I know too many, especially when just one drink. God damn. Jesus. Okay, sorry. So, can you produce on a regular schedule? I know too many artists, especially when I was working in Nashville, who were working on an album, and they're probably still working on that album, and I haven't lived in Nashville for 15 years now. You need to be able to release things. I mean, as a musician, I can release one album every year or two. That's a regular schedule. I should do a single once every month or two. As a graphic, if you want to do a web comic, can you produce that daily, weekly, whatever, But can you commit to a production schedule and stick to it? The last thing I have on here under Are You Ready? Do you have a healthy level of professional narcissism? Because you have to look at your product and say, God damn, that's good. You have to be in love with what it is you're making. Because unless you are extremely lucky, you're not going to just put your stuff out there professionally and it'll immediately skyrocket into fame and fortune and shit tons of money, and you'll have people working for you in a marketing department. If you want to make art as a business, you are going to work very hard for very little recognition for a very long time, and you better be absolutely in love with your product and what it is you're doing. Otherwise, you will never actually succeed as a business. Does that make sense? Am I going over anybody's head here? I am really tall. Okay. Any questions so far about the Are You Ready part? Okay, so let's assume the answer to all that shit is yes. Branding. I used to start talking about things like setting up, your time management and, your finances and accounting and stuff like that. But I realized over the years, figuring out your branding to at least an actionable level will help you in so many ways further down the road. It will help make stages of your business formation easier if you can figure this out. Unfortunately, branding is kind of a nebulous term, so let me give you Zay Frank's definition. Zay Frank was a blogger. You're familiar? Okay.
Yep.
More old fuckers. Zay Frank defined your brand as the emotional aftertaste that you leave behind. The emotional aftertaste that is conjured up by, but not necessarily dependent upon, a series of experiences. So it doesn't just mean like your logo. It doesn't just mean your typeface or whatever. It means absolutely everything that you have your hand in leaves a certain emotional aftertaste behind in people's minds. So your brand depends, the extent that you can control your brand depends on a lot of things. Your logo, your nameplate, those are very obvious, very straightforward in your face things. Jingles or music that you would use. If you're doing some kind of like a product launch, you may not be a musician. Your product may not be music, but if you're trying to launch some kind of product or announce some kind of a nonprofit or something, are you going to play heavy metal music, EDM, folk music? Like, what is it you stand for? What is the emotional aftertaste you're trying to leave behind with what it is you're doing? The font choices that you use on your website, your business cards, on your product packaging, your clothing choices. For you, that's kind of patently obvious. But like your clothing choices, not just when you are, like if you're a performing artist, but if you show up to a convention, like most of us are wearing t-shirts and jeans or something, like that, like with some standard deviation thereof. If I came up here in a fucking tuxedo, you'd take notice, wouldn't you? Like if you can make your clothing choice at a public event consistent with the emotional aftertaste you're trying to leave behind with your art. Alan, the cookie dragon, is always wearing his chef's hat and apron at cons because that's what he does. He bakes. And whether even if he's in fursuit or not, he's always got the chef's hat and the baker's hat and the baker's apron on. The color palettes that you choose, not just for making your art, but for your website, your business cards, your performance clothing, that sort of thing. And of course, styles and genres are part of that as well. Like part of my branding right now is dance music, is house music. Like that. It's just a genre definition, but it is part of what defines what it is I'm trying to do. So what you're shooting for is, like a well-branded artist is known and recognized upon like first glance of that stuff. Like if you hear the first 3 bars of any Led Zeppelin song, you know it's a Led Zeppelin song. You know what I mean? That's part stylistic, part the way it's recorded, part the way it's produced. Like, there's certain levels of recognition, and what you're trying to do is stay consistent with your brand, with your emotional aftertaste, in every single thing that you do, because if any of you have listened to, traditional radio or watched TV lately, you understand that repetition makes you like something better. So if you recognize this person frequently enough, if this person shows up at enough conventions, if you see their artwork often enough, even if you weren't like taking notice of it the first time, by like the 10th time you've seen it, you're like, oh yeah, I love that guy. It's the only reason Smash Mouth was a thing. Okay? Thank you for nobody shouting somebody, but
Now it's stuck in my head.
yeah, it doesn't take much, does it? All right.
It was tempting.
Yeah. So, and the reason I mention this up front, trying to get a handle on your branding, and I will give you some actionable things you can do to help lock that down, because believe me when I tell you, I understand how hard it is as an artist to figure that shit out. Like, I want to do everything. I want to make everything. I want to be everything. Knowing at least like what you're trying to do with your brand makes business decisions way easier and way quicker down the road. what fonts and colors to use, what events you attend, what causes you promote, textures and materials that you use or draw or represent or wear, or whatever, like how to dress at photo-heavy events like this. So like, let's say you're a steampunk artist, okay? Let's say you make steampunk costumes. So, logo, something with gears. It's something in like a lino cut, turn of last century kind of design. Nameplate, same sort of thing. Jingle, it would be something very, tuba and accordion heavy, I would imagine. Something very period piece. Your font choices are going to be very printing press, so like technology of the era. Clothing choices, brown, leather, done. Who was it that said steampunkers are goths who discovered brown?
Yes.
I don't know where I heard that, but it's so good. Again, like color palette choices, like brown, brass, copper, that sort of thing. Like figuring out what kind of emotional aftertaste you want to leave behind makes it so when you're staring at that blank web page that you have to design, you have some idea of at least where to begin. So, I should also mention, this shit ain't set in stone. You can always rebrand. You can always adjust your brand. You can figure out what works best for you later on down the road. You can figure out what makes you more money or gets you more recognition later on down the road and adjust your brand. You can also experiment with multiple branding exercises. Y'all are familiar with 9 Inch Nails, right? Right? Good. None of you are too young to know what that is. 9 Inch Nails was Trent Reznor's one of like 8 bands that Trent Reznor was fronting at the time, which is basically just Trent Reznor with some keyboards alone in his basement. He was doing different styles, different genres. This industrial thing called 9 Inch Nails got recognition and actually got some commercial success, and that's why you know who he is. But he had like different irons in the fire, and one of them got hot. So you can work on different brands and see what works commercially and what speaks to you as an artist. Also, separating your markets, having different brands helps with that as well. Is anybody familiar with A. Roquelaire? I don't know how you really pronounce that last name, but A. Roquelaire.
It is Anne.
Yeah, it is Anne, yeah. And you know who that is, don't you?
I know the name, but I don't remember what it's from.
It's Anne Rice.
Yes, that was her pen name that she wrote the Sleeping Beauty.
Smut.
Yeah.
She wrote smut.
Sleeping Beauty.
And I mean smut. And
then Beauty's Punishment was the second book, and Beauty's Release was the
fellow
third
perv.
book.
All right, good. So yeah, the girl that wrote the Vampire Diaries, Interview with a Vampire and all that. Yeah, her publisher was never gonna fucking let her publish anything that has rape by page 3 under that brand name. So
Cried Heaven had castration by page 3.
no shit.
Yeah.
Please don't remind me of that. So yeah, like you can use it. Miramax is another good example. Miramax is Disney. Y'all seen any Miramax films? They are violent fucking films. The Jay and Silent Bob films were Miramax films. Does that fit with the mouse? Are you going to see like Jay and Silent Bob's Snoochie Boochie Land at Disneyland anytime soon? No. They had a separate brand for releasing things for grown-ups that they eventually killed because they know where their money comes from. But you get the idea. Like being able to distill the best parts of what you're trying to do into a brand will help you focus and channel your energies in the right direction. And as an artist, and I will say this a lot over the next 3 or 4 hours we're going to be here. Time is everything. The less time you spend making useless decisions, the better. Because you can always make more money, You can always suck dick for money. You can't suck dick for time.
Wait, I can do that for money?
Yeah. You have to figure out your going rate, of course, but
I've wasted so much time.
I was told this was a family-friendly convention, but boy, I apologize for that.
Family.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, sorry. It is difficult for artists because you are more or less creating a caricature of yourself. If you're setting up like a nonprofit, if you're setting up a bakery or something like that, like you're setting up a bakery, you're selling products, it's a commodity, it's a little bit easier. But when the product is a slice of you, it becomes a little more difficult. So what you're trying to do is distill out the parts of you that of who you are or who your art is into something that you can use as a template for how you approach your business. So, how do you do that? The way that creatives, has anybody here worked like as a creative for a company, as like a web designer, creative designer, something like that? Okay. So you're familiar with a mood board? No? You haven't done this? Okay. You have. Okay. So, back in the olden times before computers, they actually would use like a cork board or a magnet board or something like that. And when they're trying to come up with like the marketing campaign for a product, people would just tack stuff to the board that they thought worked with that brand or that product launch or that album or whatever. And it's basically, it's intentionally nebulous. You just put shit you think will work on the board. That means, like, on the internet it's a whole lot easier, but you take like, photos of things like, let's say like a landscape or a cityscape, like landscape, like forest, rainforest, cityscape at night with lights and driving rain, abandoned industrial site. 3 completely different settings. Which one of those 3 works for your brand? And if you think like, okay, the landscape is just speaking to me for some reason, pin, tack it to the board. A particular font that you see somewhere on a website, like, I really like that, I don't know why. Tack it to the board. This color palette, green apparently. Tack it to the board, like I don't know why, but green is working for me. After you get enough shit on that board, you can kind of step back and things will start to coalesce a little. You'll see patterns in the chaos. You can get an idea of what it is you think works, even if you can't explain why. And then you can kind of go through that and figure out, like, okay, well, I'm noticing a running theme with nature. Okay, like use that as a way to spark your creativity in creating your own brand. Now, fortunately, we don't have to use cork. We have this useless thing that is only good for one thing: Pinterest. The only fucking thing Pinterest I've ever found is good for is for making a mood board. Every album that I've released, I make a board for it, and shit I find on the internet, when I'm trying to make the album artwork for that album, I will throw things onto a Pinterest board that work for me, even if it's like other songs, but anything I can find that I can clip, I throw up there, and then eventually I'll step back and take a look and see what the running themes are. Phrases and quotes too. Those witty things that people post on Twitter, I guess. I don't know, but whatever. Something that strikes you as like, yes, this is what I'm shooting for. This says what I'm trying to say. Put that up there. It's not going to be an immediate like aha moment once you get like enough stuff up there. It's just a tool to help you, as long as you have the goal in mind of what is my brand going to be? What is my art? There's no way to quietly leave, is there?
I mean, I'll be back. Yeah.
I should have brought a glass in here. So any questions at this point, by the way, since we got a little détente? Okay, cool. That was probably the wrong word. Tacit. Maybe tacit would have been better. So once you have something resembling an idea, another really important thing before you even start considering a business is to pick a business name, which sucks a lot. Because it used to be you could just pick a business name and roll with it. Now you need to find a business name you can get the .com for, the Facebook name for, the Twitter name for, the Instagram handle for, the YouTube username for. You have to find something that will make it as easy as possible for people to find you. And before anybody points out that you could be like .biz or .ninja or .pizza or .whatever the fuck, I'm pretty sure .whatever the fuck is a top level domain at this point. Nobody gives a fuck. .com, .net. Like .com's a must, .net is a secondary, but like if you can't get your business name .com, you should probably come up with a different business name unless you already have customers and traction with that existing business name. Believe me when I say I know how hard it is to find a usable business name that speaks to the things that you as an artist are producing and also is available on all these platforms. At Furry Fiesta last year, I decided I needed to, I'd initially tried to go with Matthew Ebel as just like moving from piano rock, which I had done for 15 years, moving into dance music. But because of, algorithms on Spotify and shit like that, like I don't want people looking for my house music and my trance music and
suddenly getting a face full of the other.
Of like everybody needs a robot and the real socialites of Plastic Boob Valley and all this shit that I used to play at cons. Like I don't want that showing up in their stream. So I had to come up with a whole new brand name. I had to rebrand myself as a new band, basically. And I sat there at my dealer table at TFF with domains.google or NameSecure or whatever, just a name registrar in front of me, typing in shit that came to mind to see if the .com was available. And if I found something that worked, I would go to Facebook and see if that username was available. Nope, fuck it, all right, back to square one. Like figure out what your basic necessity properties are. Obviously, like Twitter, probably YouTube, probably Facebook, and of course the .com. But as many social media platforms as you can find, you want to be able to have your branding consistent across all of them. Anybody remember Blotch?
Yep.
Yeah. Now you've seen Blotch's art. It's really, really well done. Really got really popular until they broke up and stopped working together. Their website was screwbald.com. Fortunately, they were apparently doing most of their business through Fur Affinity, which I'll fucking get to that later. But like that's sort of an example of branding that is working against you rather than for you. There's not a chance in hell they would ever get blotch.com. Jesus, I'm getting a lot of messages right now. Sorry. Search for, like once you figured out something that you think will work for you, go to like domains.google, just type it in, see if the .com is available, move on to the next platform that is like your second priority, see if that's available, and see if you can find something that works for you as a business name. I strongly suggest you don't use your actual name as your business name, especially as an artist. Doubly so as a performing artist, because of the fact that your brand is a caricature of yourself, is a distillation of you and the things you create. You need to have that separation so that you can clock out at the end of the day and you don't get lost. There's two ways that this can go. Well, three ways. One, you can actually manage to work it, and good on you, you're a better person than I am. Two, you get lost in this caricature identity and you lose that line between this is my art, this is my business, and this is who I am. Yeah?
Pro Jared.
Well, what?
Pro Jared, perhaps?
I don't know who that is, actually.
Oh, never mind. Keep going.
I was thinking Ziggy Stardust, but whatever.
YouTuber that had a lot of shit that went down recently.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you say YouTuber, you immediately lost me. So I'm an old fucker.
Well, he uses kind of his real name and kind of not, so
Yeah.
now he's no longer kind of doing that anymore,
Yeah.
so he has a little bit of degree of separation.
Yeah, it helps to have a very distinct line, because like again, the risk is you can either get lost in it. Like I think that's the reason Ziggy Stardust went away and he just became David Bowie. And then the other risk is that you lose, instead of like getting lost in the persona, you get lost in it as a business, and you just never clock out. You never take time for yourself. Matthew Ebel never stops existing. Hopefully, sorry. At least for another 40 years would be nice if I'm lucky. But Matthew Ebel never just stops functioning. So at the end of the day, I'm still Matthew Ebel. Like I never, I'm tempted to just work all the time. But the avian invasion business stops at about 6, and then I go motorcycling or work on house projects or whatever. But it helps to have every little bit of separation when you're self-unemployed like I am, to keep your business and personal lives separate. You can, of course, operate under your name, but be very careful. Any questions thus far? Cool. How far are we into this mess right now? Fuck. This watch is pissing me off. Perfect. Right about half an hour in. So, that's basically all I have to say on branding. I can't help you too much to define your own brand. But it can be just as simple as I make art with watercolors about animals. I mean, it really can be that simple. The more distinct and the more specific you can make it, the more potent that brand will be. I mean, it's sort of like making booze. You start with a whole lot of water and a whole lot of mash, and it gets distilled down into this, which means there's going to be less overall liquid than you started with. You won't be able to spread it around all over the place, but it is going to be far more potent than the water you started with. So the more specific that you can get, this is a great visual aid. I should have whiskey in every one of my cans.
Yes.
The more that you can distill that branding down and create something very distinct, very unique, even if it doesn't speak to all of your aspirations. You can always make a new fucking brand later, okay? You can always make very specific brand A, very specific brand B, and have parent company be Matthew Ebel Entertainment, The more distinct that you can make it, the more likely it is to be remembered. And the more likely it is to be able to be kept consistent. It's going to keep you focused. And focus helps save you time. So, moving on to finances. Unless there are any other questions about branding shit. Cool. Finances are one of the scarier things about this, but it's really not that difficult. Largely, most of you, by the way, not touching. Nonprofits, no way, not helping you at all. Sorry.
Very well aware.
I have no fucking experience there. You need, if you're a 501c anything, you need to talk to someone way more qualified than I am.
Already good.
Good. All right. So, on very fundamental levels, get separate accounts between your business and your personal stuff. Most of you are going to start out as what's known as a sole proprietorship. Anybody not know what that means? Okay. So you see at the end of some company names like Corp or S Corp or LLC or something like that. All of those are just legal distinctions whose only job is to separate you from the risk of the business. I am co-owner of an LLC in Seattle that puts on furry parties. If that business, gets in over its head, we book a cruise or something like that, and nobody shows up, and we go bankrupt, being part of an LLC means they can sue the business or go after the assets of the business. They can't come after my motorcycle or my studio equipment because there's that wall of separation there. A sole proprietorship, that wall is not there. It is nothing more than just like for your tax purposes, a legal distinction between this is a business and this is personal. Mostly used for, I can write shit off if I'm doing it as the business, and I can't if I'm doing it for personal reasons. So, sole proprietor means You are the only person in control of that business, and usually it means you're the only person in that business. You don't have employees or anything like that. If you do have employees, you really shouldn't be a sole proprietorship, because you should have some kind of legal protection, liability protection at that point. So, as far as a business type is concerned, unless you're trying to like open a bakery and have employees or are running any kind of real risk, like making investments or selling property or cars or something, something more, even more expensive than fursuits, or have the like with the bakery thing, if you have the risk of either burning a building down or poisoning people, then yeah, you should be an LLC. But otherwise, you're probably just going to be a sole prop. It's the easiest thing to do. Most states and municipalities I've been in, you don't even need to register or anything. You just tack on another form to TurboTax. They walk you through how to do your taxes, and job well done. And what that does is facilitate largely just being able to write shit off at the end of the year as business expenses. For that purpose, get separate bank accounts. Get separate PayPal accounts. It's really not hard to get a business bank account set up. You don't have to have thousands of dollars invested or to keep in a checking or savings account. If your bank is asking for that, go to a different bank. Go to a local credit union or something. Setting up a business bank account with like DCU up in Massachusetts was as easy as saying, I'd like to open a business. Thank you. And that was it. Like, it was literally super easy. I even got a business credit card, from them as well, which is great for coming to cons like this where I don't have to worry about overdrawing. I can figure it out later. What this does for you, practically, it's a little bit more accounting headache, but it's a lot less accounting headache every time tax season rolls around. If anything that you want to spend money on is for the business, meaning the lunch, breakfast, whatever the fuck we're calling it, that I bought at the bar, including the beer that I bought at the bar, because I'm here as a guest and I'm here on business, I can write that off on my taxes as a meal at the end of the year. If I get to the end of the year and all of my transactions are on one bank account, and I have to separate, shit, this restaurant, oh crap, did I go there with my clients, with my bandmates, or was I just there with my boyfriend? I went there 2 nights in a row, I know one of them was, I don't know. If I have one on one card and one on the other, means anything I spent from these accounts is tax deductible, basically. Does that make sense? Helps you figure out how much money is coming into the business and how much money is being spent by the business as well, so you can, put your finger on your business pulse and figure out how you're doing. Also means you can figure out how much money you're actually paying yourself out of the business, which seems weird, because if you're an artist, it's kind of just all you, but keeping that shit separate will make things way easier for you come tax time and give you a much better picture of how your business is doing, You may have to register as a local business. I didn't realize in the state of Washington that I have to, so I have to. Don't tell anyone. I haven't done this yet. I've been living there for about 1.5 years now. Stop recording. No. But apparently, like, even as an artist, even as a self-unemployed artist, just drawing animal dicks for people on the internet, like, you may have to register as a local business if you want to function as a business in your state, your county, or your city. And I can't help you with that. Like, just go to your city hall and tell them what you intend to do. Don't tell them about drawing animal dicks. Just say you're an artist. But tell them what you intend to do, and they will most likely be able to help you, or at least point you in the right direction for any forms, if necessary, that you need to fill out. I think when I lived in Wellesley, Massachusetts, it was like a $15 thing, and I got a little certificate that, fuck if I know where that is anymore. And I never heard from them again. It was a one-time fee. Rarely will it be like an annual fee or some exorbitant expense to just be some local businessman. Government. Oh boy, I'm skating on thin ice here, but government is rarely in the business of protecting you as a citizen. They're really there to make it easier for you as a business. I don't want to go all libertarian on you here, but So let's see here. Oh yeah, so for accounting stuff. Anybody here use Mint? Mint.com? Only two of you? Okay, so yeah, like the rest of you are yeah. The rest of you are making things a lot harder on yourself for your personal finances by not using something like Mint. Some banks will actually do stuff like Mint does as well. Mint.com is run by Intuit. Same people that make TurboTax and Quicken and QuickBooks and all that. What it does is it interfaces with your banks, even PayPal, and tracks all of your transactions, and you can set budget goals and stuff like that. And it categorizes them. If I spend money at Chevron, it knows it's a gas bill. Even if it assumes it's a gas bill, even if I'm in there buying, packaged meat products or whatever. But it makes some assumptions like, okay, you spent money at Cairn Brewery. We're going to assume that that's for alcohol. You spent money here. It's for a ferry boat or something like that. Like, come tax time, it's very easy then to figure out if you're using your business debit card or your business credit card to make these purchases. You can see I spent this much money on food expenses for the business. I spent this much money on travel expenses for the business. And you don't have to do shit except maybe once in a while make sure it didn't miscategorize some of your transactions. So, depending on your level of trust for giving Intuit access to your bank information, basically, I strongly recommend doing that for your business. And you can actually set up a single Mint account for both your business and personal stuff, because when analyzing things at the end of the year, you can tell it to ignore your personal accounts. So if you want to set up two different accounts, that'd probably make things easier for you, I guess, depending on what your style is. But I highly recommend doing that. Tax deductions. This is where being an independent artist it really shines at its best, by the way, because damn near everything is tax deductible. I forget what the actual guideline is, but it's something like it's auditors call it the laugh test. I know that. Like if you're laughing about how you bilked the IRS out of it, oh my God, I can't believe I got to write that off. You're probably not supposed to write that off, but you'd be surprised. The beer that I bought for after parties at cons, which are invite only for just my Patreon supporters, that beer is tax deductible. That's an entertainment expense for my clients. I fill a bathtub full of beer bottles at furry cons, and I get to write that shit off on my taxes. Welcome to the glorious world of being an independent artist. Okay?
Can we be friends?
Sign up. Follow me on Patreon. We definitely can. So some examples. Restaurants or cafes, not just while you're at conventions peddling your wares, but if you're there writing in your book, if you're there writing lyrics, if you're there drawing things. I mean, if you're at a cafe working on docs with your buddies setting up whatever nonprofit you were talking about, you can write off the coffee, the meal, the whatever, because it is a business meeting, and that's a reasonable, normal expense. If you're dealing at a con, even if it's Artist Alley, because not everybody can afford the business expense of a dealer table at first, but if you are there as a business, you can write off damn near everything that you do while you're here. The airplane ticket to get here, the gas it took you to get here if you came here by car, the parking fees, the hotel, like the food that you're buying, even the booze you're buying within reason. And I can't give you a specific number on what within reason is, but what I'm getting at is like, if you're treating this as a business venture, it's a fun business, but if you're treating this like a business venture, then you can write off everything that it took to get here and stay at a con like this. The mileage it took you to drive to cons or events. Not commuting to your day job, Like, you're probably not going to have a company car. You're going to have to separate out and keep a logbook of the miles you drove specifically for business functions. But you can write off the wear and tear on your car or your motorcycle or whatever vehicle you're using to get to that business function. Art supplies and equipment. You know, the 12 million colored pens that you use, or that tablet that you want to buy, that MacBook you want to buy, you can write that off on your taxes. None of this means you get it for free. It just means that it's going to hurt a lot less in April. Okay? You still have to actually be able to afford these things. But because it's a business expense, it's treated as though you never made the income equivalent to whatever it costs to do that. Software for your business. The money I spend on, you know, TurboTax or whatever every year, that's tax deductible. Record Box, which I use for DJing, that's tax deductible. Logic Pro, which I use for writing all of my music, that's tax deductible because it's all for the business. The websites, the domain names, all of that shit is tax deductible. Like, you just have to ask yourself the question, am I buying this for the business or am I buying it for myself? Sometimes the line is a little blurry. You'll have to make that call. I can't help you there. And in some cases, you can even split that up come tax time. Say I'm using 40% of my car for business and 60% of it for getting around personally. Any questions this far? Okay. I will recommend this. Talk to an actual CPA. A lot of them will do at least one free consultation, and having that conversation never hurts. It does cost you time, which you can't get back, but that's a good investment of your time. To have a real professional, somebody, not me, somebody who's actually a professional, help you, like, be able to quantifiably answer tax and accounting questions. And of course, if you can actually afford it, to have an accountant do your taxes, that never hurts either. But I would at least recommend, like, talking to a financial professional, a tax professional if possible, about setting a business up like this. Doesn't take much on the front end. I don't want to intimidate you with this shit. At the end of the day, all you're really doing is, like, going to a credit union, opening up another checking account, and just using that for the business. Keeping that separation is what I'm really trying to drive home here. And keeping immaculate records. That's why I recommend Mint. Every transaction is recorded. Sales tax sucks. Sales tax is a bitch because every state is different. Every state runs things differently. Some, like, especially if you're dealing at conventions like this. If you, anybody here dealt at Furry Fiesta? Taxes? Yeah? Nobody. All right, just you. And me, obviously. If you vend there once, you have to file quarterly. You have to send them, log into their system and say, I made $0 this in the last 3 months in the state of Texas, or they will fine you $50. Because Texas sucks. Don't get me started about Pennsylvania, and please don't get me started about the People's Republic of Massachusetts. I lived there for 10 years. But sales tax is different for every state. Fortunately, if your business is largely being transacted at cons, then the convention likes to work for the dealers. The convention will often have a handy dealer packet with information. Here's how the state of Indiana handles sales tax. Read this, follow it, actually follow it. Use your calendars, set up reminders for when you have to file shit. Same thing with federal income taxes. As a business, you have to withhold a certain amount of self-employment income and make quarterly payments to the IRS as well, which I didn't do for many years. And I wondered why I had a huge tax bill at the end of the year, and now I get refunds because I've been over withholding for myself because I can't do math. But, like, it's kind of nice getting that, like, $500 or whatever back at the end of the year. But as far as sales tax goes, like, you do need to do it. Like, you really shouldn't try and skirt it. Like, if you want to be a legitimate business, the last thing that you want, especially as a nonprofit, is to not get your tax shit in order. But you already said you're talking to more people smarter than I am about this, which is good. But largely all it involves is sending like a letter, sending in a sheet of paper or going to a website, filling out a thing, and making an online payment. If you vend at MFF, they require a paper check to be mailed to them because they still live in the 1960s, but you need to do it. You just got to get your, when you open that business bank account, they'll probably give you like a stack of like 10, starter checks or something. All those are going to go to the state of Illinois. So, because nobody uses checks except for them.
That sounds like the hell I'm going to be going through then.
Yeah.
Because I live in Illinois.
Fun. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'm a liberal, but yeah, living in blue states, the taxes are fun to navigate. I miss New Hampshire. New Hampshire, they didn't care. No sales tax, no income tax. As long as you don't own property, it's nice. So, I got about 7 more minutes on this.
Quick question. How's Indiana overall? Easy, not easy?
Easy.
Okay, good.
Yeah. It's a one-time thing. A lot of states will have what I think they call it like a transient vendor or something like that, because they know, like a band that's on tour, they don't need to file quarterly. They're going to be in this state for one night, get drunk, sell some CDs, and move on with their lives. So there's like a one-time, I sold this much, I sold $1,000 in CDs, here's your $10 or whatever, your $30, Like, Indiana's relatively painless. Not like Texas. But again,
Texas sounds like a bag of suffering.
Texas, the only reason I harp on Texas for this is because I didn't realize I had to file quarterly, and they sent me like a fine for $50. And I did email them and say, hey, what the fuck? Like, I've only been here once, and I'm probably not going to come back to the state of Texas now. And they waived the $50. And then I went out of business. And then opened a new business next TFF, and then went out of business. Because that was less of a hassle than fucking remembering to file quarterly for what, Anyway, sorry. Lastly, actually selling shit. Oh yeah, that's part of a business, isn't it? One of the hardest things to do is set a price. And
Especially
this...
when you're starting out.
Yes.
You don't know what you're worth.
Yeah. It was either Mitch Joel or Seth Godin that said, I want to give you the book for free, but I'm charging you for it so you know what it's worth. Like, you can, there's a fine line, there's a balancing act between what other people who do what you do are charging and what it actually costs you to make what you're making. So, like in my line of work, it's kind of set in stone. Like there's, anywhere from $1.50 to $2.50 on Beatport for something, 99 cents for a track, $10 for an album, and like anything above that, you better be Beyonce. As far as commissions go, and as far as prints and stuff like that, you kind of have to suss out like what is my time worth, what are my materials worth, what are the delivery costs. And I don't mean just like mailing something to someone, I mean the plastic sleeves that you wrap them in, the packaging, the cardboard backing so that your prints don't get scrunched or whatever, like whatever it takes to put that product in the hand of the customer, you have to factor all that into what you're charging. And then figure out what's my profit margin going to be from there. So, like after all of those expenses, if all you do is digital art, largely what all you're looking at are your annual expenses, like website hosting and domain names and and email marketing costs and shit like that, and then anything else on top of that is profit. But if you're actually vending at cons, there's physical needs. Do not undervalue yourself. You're actually better off starting by overpricing, but then doing some things for free, like even like contests or whatever. Like charge what you think like you really want to make for something, and like if it's not really taken off, do some free shit for people and tell them like, well, this is what I normally charge, even if nobody's actually paid for it at that price yet. But like, see if you can generate some interest with with freebies or half off or art shares or whatever, but like set that price high because it's a lot easier to bring that price down than it is to bring that price up and expect your customers to stick around. Piracy happens. So the fuck what? Ignore it. That's all I can say. Like, I lived through the transition from CDs to digital to streaming and watched the record labels try and fight piracy tooth and nail, and all they did was make it impossible for their legitimate customers to play shit that they paid money for. If you've ever tried to watch a movie on your flat screen TV and had it tell you there's an HDCP error and the Roku that's streaming it on Netflix is somehow somehow weirdly pirating something, like DRM always sucks, and it's one of those things like it's going to cost you more in time to try and find ingenious ways so that nobody can steal your shit than it is to just write off the people that are going to pirate shit. Watermark things, put your logo on things, whatever. If they steal it and post it online, like, wow, I want to commission this person, like, just treat it like advertising that you're not spending money for, because you're going to waste a lot more time trying to force people to go through your paywalls and shit. Don't make it too easy. Don't make it, obvious. Don't put your full resolution artwork out there just like where anyone can find it, unless you're intending for that to be a freebie, as a sample for people. But don't make your legitimate customers suffer because you think somebody might pirate, It's like when they tried drug testing welfare recipients in Florida. Anybody remember this story? It happened like a few years back. Somebody got the great idea, like, hey, we should make it so if you want welfare money in Florida, you have to pass a drug test. It cost the state something like $1 million. They found like 2 people that were using drugs, and they were able to save like $100,000. It cost them a shit ton more money to implement this thing they thought was going to protect them than it did than the money they actually saved doing it. Don't fall into that trap. Also, fuck Florida.
And Texas.
Yes. I'm a very cynical bastard at this point in my life. And yeah, lastly, since we're right on the button here right now, places where you can sell things. Square. The Square readers. Oh, that's a swipe. That's archaic too. Sorry. Square. There we go.
That means something else.
Yeah. Well, not with that motion. It'd be more. Anyway, fuck it. I think that's the idea. But, a lot of you, I'm sure, are aware that, Square does the chip readers and the tap pay readers and stuff like that. They do they do the full-on e-commerce thing, too. You can sell event tickets. You can use it for physical locations.
Invoicing.
Yeah, invoicing, online sales. You could sell commissions.
You can run payroll through it.
Yeah, and it's free. Like, they take their cut of your transactions. Wow, what panel is in here next?
Nothing in common.
Oh, okay. Anyway.
You can even book appointments, like say you do consultations as a
Right.
part. You can book those in Square.
Okay, so you're familiar with this.
Yeah.
Right. So Square, like if you're just getting started, like even if you don't have a website set up, buy the domain name, which is, by the way, the website stuff I'm getting into in the next panel. Buy the domain name, you can just point it at your Square store and it will be your domain name up at the top and this free e-commerce site underneath. And all the transactional stuff, it goes straight into your bank account. It's not held in limbo via PayPal for however long they decide. I cannot give you any advice whatsoever on what kind of services or transactions to use for adult material. I'm a musician. I can yell fuck in my music as often as I want. It's not considered porn. Okay? So I've never had to deal with this. This is something, there is a wealth of knowledge about this among your peers. If you're drawing animal dicks, you're going to have to figure out how to actually get money without violating terms of service elsewhere. Sorry.
I can answer that.
Later. Real quick. Did somebody say there was one musician, I think, that was here earlier? No? All right, well, they're gone. Fuck it. Bandcamp CD babies. We're done there. And videos, you can actually sell videos on YouTube and Vimeo. I wouldn't. You're leaving so soon. Anyway, but that's like, as far as places to sell your stuff, for the love of God, don't treat Fur Affinity like it's a storefront. Don't even treat it like a website.
I have one, I just barely use it.
Treat it like a marketing tool. Treat it like a billboard. I barely use mine too, but that's because to this day, musicians on Fur Affinity are listed on the front page below poets. Poetry is above music. What the fuck?
But my feelings.
Yeah.
Music can.
Oh, your feelings. Let me sing about it. Anyway, so yeah. Any other questions? Because I'm already 3 minutes over time at this point. Yes.
One very, very quick.
They all think that.
Banks versus credit unions. Where do you stand?
Yes. Sorry, what?
Banks versus credit unions. Where do you stand? With this kind of-
Banks have very little to offer these days that credit unions can't do for you. I can walk into, I mean, I'm a member of Digital Federal Credit Union in Massachusetts, which is this way, I guess. And I can walk into a credit union branch in Seattle and get a home loan, a car loan, whatever. Most of them, if not all of them, are part of a co-op, so they're basically all one big nationwide bank, but they're locally run, they have local rules, they can bend their local rules for you. I got my personal credit card approved based on my credit score alone through my credit union, which Bank of America would never do, because they had my business account and they're like, oh, so your personal finances, we know you're paying yourself a pittance and keeping most of your money in your business account, so what it looks like you make for income is shit, but we can see your business account, like, yeah, you're good for this. And like, no bank would bend over like that. No bank would bend their rules like that for me. I always suggest a local credit union, and it doesn't hurt to stay within a local economy as well. They're less likely to make huge bets on the housing market as well.
You mentioned Bandcamp and CD Baby.
Yes.
Do you have a rant on Spotify?
Get there.
Get there.
Deal with it. That's where people are consuming their music. You can.
How does the money side of that work? Never looked into it.
What do you mean? In what respect?
Yeah, how does an artist make money on Spotify?
Badly, but you know. Okay. The simple trick to making money as a musician on Spotify is to have a humongous back catalog.
Yeah.
And to get as many friends as you can to, you know, like the same way you would get fame and fortune anyway. Get all your friends to play your shit and spread your music around.
Personally, the only way that I ever made any money as a musician was what you were talking about. It was like I only sold T-shirts by giving away free CDs.
Yeah. Like, I have enough of a back catalog at this point that I get, you know, an okay check from CD Baby for my streaming royalties.
Yeah.
I got to figure out how it works with the labels and whatnot too. Shit. Just realized that, like, I know Bass Rebels owes me some pounds, and I better get those out before those mean nothing. October 31st, keep your eyes peeled.
You're right.
Sorry, I'm not looking at the one person with a British accent in the room, but so yeah, no. As far as like the streaming things go, like, you know, even fucking Taylor Swift can't fight that. You're not gonna. Just go with it. Just assume that like that's what you're gonna get paid from them, and you have no power, and just take what they give you. Because you're better off just keeping that regular production schedule, building that back catalog, and that thing that you wrote 1,000 years ago. Like Everybody Needs a Robot is a song that I just shat out because I had like a couple of minutes to fill between two songs on a concept album, and it became like basically my best seller of all time. And I still get royalties from that because it shows up in the algorithm in, you know, the suggested music and suggested tracks if you listen to Jonathan Colton or something like that. And nobody's really buying that as a track. Nobody's buying that as a CD, but it's still making me money.
What's the payout for things like fractions of a penny per play?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then miraculously, out of nowhere, Ride from Higher Saves the Pandas made me like $4,000 last quarter.
I love that.
Because it got played somewhere a lot, and I had no fucking idea about it. I sat on that money for like a month, and they didn't ask for it back. So I'm like, well, if it's a clerical error, it's not getting noticed. So hey, paying off my credit card. Anyway, so yeah, the next session I think is like 7 o'clock.
Yeah, and it's next door.
It's next door. So yeah, website and social media management is going to happen in about 20 minutes, which means I can be.
There's nothing in this room till 9.
Cool.
Silver Gato Man, he bought me a coffee. Silver Gato Man, here is the song for thee. He likes to video all the panels at the cons. You should go and watch them whether they are short or long. Silver Gato Man, you video that's not a jibe. All of you go to his YouTube channel and like and subscribe.